Sonic Truth, Dynasty focused fantasy football podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky of RotoWire.com, along with Theo Gremminger, and of course the Podfather is here. Guys, the schedule is released. It seems like there's a lot of people are into this. I know that there's probably supposed to be into it, but I can't fake it unless I'm open to be persuaded. Guys, is there anything from the schedule release that's helpful to Dynasty players? Are you into this holiday?
If you're from the fantasy perspective, week 17, looking at week 17, especially for some of these contests, Alan, is a real thing, especially looking at the potential bad weather games. But no, it's about having fun. It's about getting hyped. And it's the only sport there is that people geek out this much about the schedule. Besides like a World Cup, like naming the games for the World Cup, there's nothing else like this in sports. Where, we all sit back and, Alan, I was up till 12:30 at night last night writing a article for PlayerProfiler. It looked like on the schedule release, like, is anybody who does baseball or basketball coverage doing something like that? No one. So it's like, we get excited for it. This year we have so much football coming at us. We have 5 international games. We have 5 Monday Night Football doubleheaders.
Theo's a shill. He's a shill for the NFL. We
get a Friday game. We get a Friday game, so we have the Thursday opener, Baltimore, Kansas City, and then we get Philly, Green Bay, which is a great game, in Brazil on Friday on opening weekend. Like, you go down the list. Black Friday, Christmas Day doubleheader. Like, we have so much football coming at us. It's awesome. We want football all the time. And I'm also of the opinion, Alan, that like for fantasy, those people that complain about having like the extra slate, the international game, all these other games, forget those people. It makes fantasy football better when we have more games to kind of pay attention to, more games sort of on an island. I love it. I love the schedule release.
There's a game on an island?
No, island game meaning like no other games going on. Come on, Matt. Come on. You got me. You got me. You got me.
I got you. Week 17, what's your favorite matchup?
I haven't dove into it quite as much. Let me pull up my article.
You just wrote an article. I thought I teed you up.
But it was every single. I basically went through the entire season. There's one massive game, week 17. Let me just pull this up. Oh yeah, it's Detroit, San Francisco, week 17. That's the one. Detroit at San Francisco. From fantasy perspective, we don't have to worry about the weather, and also you get the rematch of the NFC title game. Is Detroit for real this year? Can they go into San Francisco, get that win heading into the playoffs? And also, San Francisco right now is the favorites to win the Super Bowl. They have them ahead of Kansas City in pretty much all the markets. And then every Kansas City game is huge because we've never had a three-peat Super Bowl winner. And Kansas City could do it this year. So we'll see.
What it means is it's only going to drive up the price of Brandon Ayuk even higher. I was shocked to learn that Brandon Ayuk going in the mid-second round of best ball drafts right now, which is crazy because he's never delivered anything close to that.
I saw him
and they haven't traded Debo yet, and it's just a rumor. And then they drafted a guy that people like. I heard Ricky Pearsall was a great pick at the end of the first round. Did George Kittle's alive? He didn't die, did he? Christian McCaffrey's still alive, right? So, I mean, it's amazing to me that I'm usually the guy that's fading the analysis of there's too many mouths to feed, too many mouths. There's a lot of mouths out there. Chomp, chomp, chomp. They want to eat, right? Well, in this particular case, this is not the most prolific offense. This is not a high-volume offense. It's also an offense that had the most yak yards in the league last year. And yak is not a sticky statistic. I know they have Debo Samuel, and he's one of not the best yak receivers, but he's also getting older. There's no way they're going to have the same yak efficiency they did last year. So on a lot of levels, this Brandon Ayuk ADP in every format is nonsense. And all this does is pour gasoline. This schedule pours gasoline on the Brandon Ayuk ADP in all formats, and to me, just put them on the block. See what you can get.
Counterpoint, 15.5 points per game last year, Matt, on only 105 targets, and you named it. Like George Kittle, Debo getting older, Ayuk is 26, right in that prime. I don't know. It's Allen, he's wide receiver 11 on Underdog, but it's sort of like
I was going to say I saw him go on the 1-2 turn the other day.
What?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I see the case that Theo's making, but I'm with Podfather.
He's got to go first round then.
Yeah, no, I just can't do it.
Is he playing Detroit?
But I'm ready to. It's not crazy, but it's just something like I wouldn't draft myself. But if someone wants to do it, hey, listen, I have a lot of Brandon Ayuk in my Dynasty league, so I'm rooting for it. But man, and by the way, Debo has never really been the picture of health, right? There's going to be at least 3.5 games of just Brandon Ayuk. So for best ball, it's not a bad play if you're all in on it.
If we're talking about value, okay, I'm looking at our draft planner right now, PlayerProfiler.com. There's a couple places you should go on PlayerProfiler.com. We have a fantasy homepage. So PlayerProfiler.com/fantasy, that is where you are going to see Theo Gremminger's schedule release article, as well as an article from Stephen Pintado from Dynasty Nerds. We have a partnership with Dynasty Nerds. A little article exchange with them.
Whoa.
Dynasty
they get Theo and we get Stephen Pintado. We want Rich Dotson. That's bullshit.
Very well written by Steve.
No, I'm sure Steve's great, but we're giving them Theo Gremminger. Theo is Player Profiler royalty, and we're getting Steve Bonato.
Listen, guys. Steve, shout out. Great job. We're happy to have your article.
Pintado.
Yeah, but
Alan,
tell him to
that's
put Rich's name.
Disrespectful.
I'm only kidding. It's a joke. I love you,
Alan, this is Stephen Pintado. You don't know Stephen Pintado?
The Stephen Pintado? You didn't say that. Let's give them Jason
I can't
Alwine.
believe
That's a fair trade.
Going into the show, I didn't see Alan killing Stephen Pintado. I didn't see it. Very unfair. Very unfair. So 2 places to go. Go to /fantasy. If you haven't seen this landing page with all of our fantasy content, it'll blow your mind. And then also go to the Dynasty Deluxe section and go to the draft planner. That's where I am right now. I'm on the draft planner. And I can pull up, basically it takes our rankings, it overlays the ADPs, and then it highlights every round, every pick, where the values are. And the value in San Francisco in Dynasty is actually with Debo and Kittle, and there's a big red highlight on Brandon Ayuk that he is grossly overvalued. So that's where we're at, right? That's where we're at. So 49ers are not a stay away, but generally speaking, there's value with wide receivers and tight ends as they get older. And that's what you'll see with our rankings, where you see, oh, wow, okay. Debo is going a little bit earlier in their rankings than I'm seeing him in drafts. So we're saying, draft him. And then the opposite is true. Generally speaking, the opposite is true with older running backs. So you'll see the older running backs, whether it even be Jonathan Taylor, who's now past the age apex, and on down the list. Josh Jacobs, you keep going, even older running backs, we tend to fade the hell out of these guys. And most of the time, whether it be Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, you're going to thank us that you didn't burn a too early pick on those guys, where we're saying, hey, you're better off going with a Debo. You're better off going with a little bit older receiver, because based on the age curve, receivers produce a hell of a lot more fantasy points in their late 20s and early 30s than a running back would. So that's why you're seeing, where's the value? Because the theme of this show today is underrated players. If you want to start with the general and then go into the specific, generally speaking, we believe that older receivers, older tight ends are underrated, and the older running backs are overrated.
How about quarterbacks, Theo? What kind of is someone like Jared Goff, who just became the second highest annual salary at $53 million, who's locked in for at least 2 years minimum, probably 4? Is he a little underrated right now in Superflex leagues?
We've been talking about this for months, Alan, about Jared Goff being the one you want to target in startups. Like, we were talking about this last year. Last year, even, like, people were dumpster diving, looking for, like, the Sam Howells in Dynasty startups, when we were saying Jared Goff, because the market just sort of never reflected it. And it wasn't because of the quality of the play on the field. It was because of this perception that Jared Goff was going to be replaced by the organization. The problem is Jared Goff just kept playing well and kept winning too many games for them to, like, add anybody viable. Jared Goff is an exceptional value, I think, in all formats right now. Underdog, he's quarterback 16. And then in startups, I was able to add him in a startup like, before the contract signed. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a correction, but at the end of the day, there is potential for Jared Goff to put up like a top 5 season this year, just based on the quality of the offense. And now with this contract, he's locked into all these elite playmakers, and he gets no credit for having to lead an inexperienced group last year. Jahmyr Gibbs was a rookie. Sam Laporta was a rookie. Jamison Williams was like in experience, basically a rookie. And those guys finished 5th in the NFL in points scored. I think Goff is a great value everywhere. I would go try to trade for him in my dynasty leagues or take him in the startup.
I have an even better value for you. The best value on our draft board, the draft planner, is in Superflex. It is a quarterback, and we're saying draft him twice as early as he generally goes. Dak Prescott.
Next year's starting
Dak
quarterback
Prescott is a screaming value. We're saying take Dak Prescott in the late 2nd round of a Superflex draft. Meanwhile, he's going on in sleeper Superflex drafts. He's going at the beginning of the 4th round, which is criminal. This is Dak Prescott, man. They don't have any running backs. What?
Yeah. By the way, he might be the Giants' starting quarterback next year. I think that was the plan. They have, he's going to be a complete free agent. That's probably why the Giants didn't trade up. Dak Prescott would be beloved in New York. It makes too much sense that the Giants would, get out of the Daniel Jones thing and get into the Dak Prescott. I mean, there's a lot of teams, but that was the one that immediately popped to mind. Which
QB4 in points per game last year, and the market's sort of like, whatever.
We are mind melding with Alex Palumbo in the chat. He chatted this before I saw it and before we even started talking about this. Goff and Dak are the most undervalued in Superflex. That's what he said. You know why he said that? Because he is part of our community. He has access to our premium tools. He listens to the show, so he already knows these things, right? He already feels it. He can feel the energy from the universe screaming, Dak, Goff, Dak, Goff, Goff, Dak, Goff, Dak.
Yes, there must be a Dak Prescott. I'm in a startup currently right now, and Dak went way earlier than that, but I don't know what it struck me that this was earlier than his ADP. He went 2.6 in this draft, but I think that was way ahead of his ADP. Is he really a 4th round Superflex startup pick? That seems, I would think
you could get him in the 3rd round. You can get him in the 3rd round for sure.
This guy took Lamb in the 1st at 1.7 and came back with Dak at 2.6.
But you have to understand, on Sleeper, it's different than the FFPC. There's a lot fewer sharp players on Sleeper, and there's a lot of leagues that have no hardcore players. They're just people that are experimenting for the first time with Dynasty. You have a bunch of people that getting together, and they're starting a league, a Dynasty league. They heard Dynasty's fun. They start a Dynasty league, and they go the Superflex route, and they don't realize the value. I mean, we've all been there. Yeah. We've all been there when we were just getting started, and we had no concept of how much more valuable quarterbacks are than the other positions in Superflex. It takes years to actually get it fully figured out, where if you're at the 2-3 turn and you see Dak Prescott, you're slamming the draft player button.
Right. When you have Matt Ryan and Tom Brady as your Superflex quarterbacks and they both fall out of the league and you're like, no one's going to trade me your quarterback, in the next startup, you do it a little differently, right, Theo?
Oh, 100%. Lessons learned, and sometimes, you overdo it, try to correct it,
Guys, not other quarterbacks, but other players that are underrated right now or might be some of the Kansas City pass catchers. Rashee Rice is lined up to miss half the season. Now, I know we're supposed to take a long-term view in Dynasty, but man, if he misses 8 games, 10 games, and again, that's speculation. He could miss 2, he could miss 4. But is there something to be said here? I mean, Xavier Worthy to the moon, we already know. But Hollywood Brown seems to be still going at a fair price in Dynasty.
There it is. That's one of the most underrated assets right now. I don't even like Marquise Brown. Nobody do not like Marquise Brown. In fact, at no point have I ever said, hey, everybody, you got to go get Marquise Brown. Right? I've been fading. It's been one of the more profitable tactical moves is just to fade Marquise Brown the last 5 years. It's worked out, okay? This is not the year to fade him, right? Especially because Rashee Rice has now 2 intersections with law enforcement in the same offseason. The track record for those types of players is very, 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 very bad.
One more time with that. See if you can do it again.
What? Do it again, Matt.
That was impressive. I actually enjoyed it. It wasn't annoying at all. I actually liked it. I wasn't.
A little ASMR for you.
Yeah.
I mean, Hollywood Brown has a 145 target season, right under his belt, and then we saw him have a really nice start in 2022, and then sort of faded off when D-Hops came back. I think you're right. I think Hollywood Brown is definitely a value. Xavier Worthy's been priced way, way up. I think we can take a little bit of credit for that one with the Worthy steam, but he's definitely going a lot higher than you'd want to pay right now in a trade market. If you can get Xavier Worthy, go get him. But most leagues he's getting steamed way up.
Well, that's the problem. I go to the draft planner, and on the draft planner, it's saying that we have Worthy right at where he should be going. And so I can't say he's a value because the market is caught up to him because, of course, it's the most obvious thing ever, right? It's like we have no insider info on Xavier Worthy. There's nothing we can say that everyone doesn't already know and everyone's already excited about. There's guys like Tank Dell that for some reason the market doesn't fully appreciate. There's a bunch of guys that are second-year players, whether it be Jordan Addison. I think Jordan Addison is a concern this year, but in 2025 and beyond, I think Jordan Addison is going to be a great dynasty asset. He was very productive last year, especially if you put him in context for a rookie putting 13-plus fantasy points per game. That's impressive, right? Zay Flowers. We think that Zay Flowers, Addison, Tank Dell, these guys are all buys at their ADPs. So there's plenty of great options in the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth rounds at wide receiver in startups, especially Superflex startups where you might go quarterback, and then start pounding receiver if you're going to go 0 RB. 0 RB in a Superflex startup in Dynasty is very, very viable.
Oh, yes.
100%.
Oh, yes.
100%.
Hey, just before we hit our first break, guys, is Travis Kelce, doesn't matter the format, is he a little underrated from the same reasons? I mean, 4th round in underdog, right? You could take him on the 3-4 turn. And then in Superflex Dynasty, forget it, like 7th round. Even if it's a 2-year proposition, is he the best buy? Is he the most underrated on this team?
The most underrated on this team is the 24-year-old running back who gets treated like this is a guy I don't want on my Dynasty roster in startups. It's Isaiah Pacheco.
Right,
Isaiah Pacheco
Theo
is the value, Alan.
Right. But I'm saying, but when you get, and I love the call, but it's Pacheco or any of the other running backs that are there. Travis Kelce he's still, if you believe he has that separator, he can really lap the field or at least pace the elite guys. I mean, he has never been this cheap before. This is like this is Tony Gonzalez's last year at age 37 prices right now.
Was Tony Gonzalez getting drunk the entire summer before his last big fantasy year? Because Travis Kelce's living the good life right now in the public eye. Like, I don't think Travis Kelce's going to be bad. I by all means, if somebody wants to get rid of Travis Kelce for cheap because he's old, go ahead and get him. I think the contract extension, having 2 years there, you feel like less kind of pressure that he's going to retire. But I don't know if he's as much of an elite difference maker with the added competition at wide receiver. And also, like, Pacheco had 44 receptions last year. Pacheco, they didn't add any running back competition for Pacheco, whereas Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, I don't know. I mean, I think he's fine. Like, Kelce's fine.
Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews, there's George Kittle. There's plenty of older tight ends. I mean, Dallas Goedert. Pat Freiermuth. There's plenty of value tight ends in Dynasty. You don't have to. What are you really going to get from Travis Kelce, right?
1 year. It's a
1
year,
but it's not going to be big time production. The guy is not going to go back to what he was. He's not going to give you a Tony Gonzalez swan song. And we saw decline in efficiency in the second half. And just like Theo said, this is a guy that's not focused on his strength and conditioning. He's extended the sort of a veteran deference extension. Like, hey, let's start ramping up some other guys, and you can help to develop them and mentor them. But he's not going to be a big time difference maker. So that's a fade to me in Dynasty. Like, I want difference making production for at least a year or two if I'm going to go with an aging veteran. I don't see it with Kelce. In fact, we're actually behind on the field. We have Kelce lower in our rankings than the field.
Matt, you nailed it, though. Evan Engram is cheaper in a lot of Dynasty leagues than Travis Kelce is right now. And Evan Engram, like, you feel really good about his sort of stability there and sort of his peak. He's younger. We saw last year the absurd amount of catches, the absurd amount of targets. And now this year they have transition at the wide receiver position where it's Brian Thomas Jr. trying to overtake Christian Kirk in the wide receiver pecking order there, where Evan Engram is just like this stable target alpha right there attached to a good quarterback and costs you less than a guy like Kelce.
Want to hear something funny? Here, I got a great bit of trivia for you. So generally speaking, we're behind the field on every tight end. Okay? All of them. Bowers, Kincaid, Laporta. The industry, the general public, everybody, like novices, experts, they're all almost always going to be higher on tight ends than us. We are not tight end drafters here, especially outside tight end premium. There's only one tight end on this entire board, on the draft planner board. There's one tight end that we believe is going later than we would draft him, and that's Evan Engram. Evan Engram is the one guy. Every other tight end we believe generally goes earlier than they should. We have, Goddard and Kittle going. We're rated ADP on Goddard and Kittle. We're rated ADP on a Mark Andrews, and then it's Evan Engram where we're like 2 rounds ahead of ADP on Evan Engram, and that's the only one. All these other guys, I mean, especially these jag tight ends like a Jake Ferguson. Woof. Jake Ferguson is the most overrated tight end in all of Dynasty. What are you accomplishing? It's like you're getting baseline production without the upside. Congratulations.
Who was the dude
I got Evan Engram after Jake Ferguson in a startup I'm currently in on FFPC.
See? It's crazy.
Jake Ferguson's team is there, but I'll say, like, Jake Ferguson, a lot of tight ends could put up big-time production attached as Dak Prescott. Like, Ferguson's not going to hurt you, but like you said, Matt, it's like, if you're going to take him in that sort of range in a Dynasty startup, I want, like, a difference maker that's not, like, a situational difference maker. Like, Evan Engram, yeah.
Theo, Ben Sinnott or Ferguson?
Ben Sinnott.
Podfather?
And Ben Sinnott's already steaming up there. Ben Sinnott's steaming in these startups.
Ask yourself, run the thought experiment. What am I gaining? What am I gaining with Dalton Schultz? What am I gaining with Jake Ferguson? What am I gaining? You're not gaining anything. These guys are not next-level athletes. They are just guys that are there getting targets in the right situation. The situation changes. Team adds receivers. Team loses a quarterback. Team has injuries on the offensive line. They have to then stay in more. Everything changes. It's like these jag tight ends produce for one season at a time when the moon and the stars align and everything works.
Austin
and
Hooper.
Then generally speaking, they're not gonna help your fantasy team. It's Austin Hooper all over again. It's every time. We've been there. Austin Hooper was on a team that led the league in pass attempts. They were healthy, and he was the third option. And he put up top 5 tight end numbers. and he was never heard from again. It's like we have to relearn this lesson with tight ends every single offseason, and, that's the thing. You say no to Groundhog Day when you subscribe to Player Profiler. That's the thing.
I have so much Ben Sinnott right now in Dynasty, guys. Ben
Rookie tight end.
Sinnott, don't loop him in with the Jake Fergusons of the world.
No,
guys.
he has real upside. He has athleticism. This is a different situation. Yeah. And also I love everyone on Washington. Yep. I mean, Washington is just the best team. It's the premium players, the Daniels, especially in best ball, not in Dynasty necessarily, but Daniels and McLaurin are highly undervalued, and then the fringier guys are undervalued. But in Dynasty, pretty much everyone with the exception of Jaden Daniels is a value. The running back that actually has the widest differential between where we have him and where the market has him it's Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, talking about undervalued Dynasty assets. Brian Robinson is that.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk about Brian Robinson because I just saw him traded in a league that it blew my mind. But let's take a quick break first. We'll get a word from our sponsor. We'll come back. We'll continue talking about underrated players, undervalued players in Dynasty with a little tinge of best ball in there. And starting with Brian Robinson, but we'll be right back.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest into bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
We're back with the Sonic Truth. Alan Seslowsky, RotoWire.com, along with Theo Gremminger and the Podfather. We're talking about underrated players in your Dynasty leagues. Before that break, guys, you brought up Brian Robinson. I mean, he's just talk about like perception of just a jag. Podfather, or why is he someone that we should be targeting maybe in our Dynasty leagues?
Kirk Bowles is back. Kirk Bowles back in the chat. Of course he's back. Kirk Bowles is back.
Is that
Kirk Bowles has some incredible feedback for us.
Thank you, Kirk.
He brought something up, and I had to share it because it was something I was thinking before the show, and I didn't even mention it because I thought it was funny. But I think now that Kirk Bowles has said the quiet part out loud, we should talk about it. I think that no one in the history of a fantasy football stream has had their face take up a greater proportion of the available screen than Theo.
Concrete head.
I like getting up close with my audience, and I like putting it all out there. You guys want to show a little more background, go for it. But we all have our own personal styles.
Yep, he looks like he's got a boxer's head. Like if I threw a right hook, it would break my knuckles, and he would laugh.
That's right.
Man,
I would laugh at all.
You haven't seen Theo's kids. Theo's kids could run through a brick wall. These are linebackers in the making.
Alphas.
Love these kids.
Theo's like the Thing. You remember the superhero, the Thing.
Yeah, they've got some freaking Thing genes. That's for sure, man. It's cool. What about Rico Dowdle? Because we're gonna get to Brian Robinson later, but before we get to Brian Robinson, I think we should stay in the NFC East. Talk about a fringier player, Rico Dowdle. Why not? If I'm going to fade Brandon Ayuk because I need to see the trade of Debo happen before I'm going to run out and assume the trade of Debo is going to happen, because there's still a possibility that actually it's Brandon Ayuk that gets traded. Wouldn't that be the ultimate rug pull? right? Oh, I'm going to take Ayuk at the 1-2 turn because I know Debo is going to get traded. And then it's like, oh, wait, Brandon Ayuk is actually demanding a trade. Wait, Brandon Ayuk is being traded, just like Tyreek Hill was a few years ago, surprising everybody. Wait, what just happened? Oh, no. Right now he's a 4th rounder because he went anywhere else and his ADP would fall. Well, until the Cowboys actually sign a running back, as of right now, Rico Dowdle is the number 1 running back, the RB1 in Dallas.
It feels a little Alexander Mattison like waiting to happen though, guys, where like we've seen this sort of situation where like Matt, it's awesome when you were telling people to draft Rico Dowdle in the 18th round last year and you get a big hat tip because Matt, you were ahead of schedule on Rico Dowdle as like a handcuff to add. And a lot of dynasty managers have him on their roster right now and are feeling like it's like found money. But I don't know. It seems like one of these things where this could be actually a split, and it could be super annoying with Zeke and Dowdle, and then a little bit of Deuce Vaughn thrown in there. I don't know. I feel like it's sort of a cash out time for Rico Dowdle.
When did the Cowboys sign Zeke?
Recently, like after the draft.
So I'm an idiot.
No, you're not necessarily
because I read the show sheet. The way I read the show sheet, I just pulled a complete Ron Burgundy. Okay, the way the show sheet read to me, I thought that the Cowboys had not yet signed Zeke, and then they did sign Zeke. Of course, they signed Zeke. How did I not know that they signed? Of course, I knew they signed Zeke, but I for some reason read the show sheet a certain way, and I'm like, well, I guess they haven't signed Zeke. Maybe I'm wrong.
Less than $2 million guaranteed, though, Matt. For a guy who's that big of a presence in the organization, like if this thing goes south, I mean, there's been people just sort of speculating that Dallas will be the landing spot for one of these running backs that's sort of like unnecessary to the roster, like a Dameon Pierce is sort of out of favor with the Houston Texans coaching staff. He could potentially be had for cheap. A Khalil Herbert, maybe he sort of gets a little bit phased out. Like, I don't know. I feel like buying into Rico Dowdle now, the Zeke thing doesn't scare me as much, but it's certainly annoying. But I think it's more of like they could get somebody for cheap later in the summer. This could be just a backfield that we can't really figure out all year long, all summer long.
Would you take a 3rd rounder for Zeke, guys? Because the guys that you can get in the 3rd rounder of your rookie draft are coming up are like Kamani Vidal. I know you love him.
All
Ray
day long,
Davis.
you're taking a 3rd for Zeke in your rookie draft.
I'm sorry. I meant for Dowdle. Or for either. What if someone said to you, Theo, I'll give you Zeke and Dowdle. You just give me 3.5.
3.5.
Which side of that you want? Yeah, 3.5. How about you, Podfather?
Wait,
you can get Kamani Vidal. You can get Burton.
I want the 3rd round pick.
I get Tyrone Tracy.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So that that Zeke and Dowdle combo is not really worth that much. It's not even worth a 3rd rounder. So if you have it, you just have to hold it because you don't want to really take a 4th rounder for them.
No, we're putting all of this whole segment, just so everybody knows, this whole segment is going in the outtakes of the podcast. I'm deleting this whole thing. I'm putting it in the outtakes. Why this was on the show sheet, I don't know. And it was a complete trick. Why would you put Rico Dowdle on the show sheet and make me look like Ron Burgundy? You're an asshole, Alan.
I put Zeke Elliott is back to the Cowboys in a certain committee.
You said Rico Dowdle. Nobody would believe you can get him for a 3rd round pick.
Look above that.
I know it's above that. Right. God damn it, Alan. Of course I'm going to blame you. I'm not going to blame myself. I'm not going to blame myself because I don't read. Right? I can't read the line above it. And I don't even know what I'm about to say. Like it conflicts with my understanding of who's already signed in free agency. No, of course I'm going to be Ron Burgundy, and I'm not going to blame myself. Why would I? I'm going to blame you. That's why you're on the show.
Human meat shield?
Yeah. We have you here, so I don't have to have any accountability whatsoever. Yep. That's the beauty of you. And this is all, all of the outtake. That's the beauty of it. This is live television. So we can let the people on YouTube and Twitch, and hopefully there's a Twitch person out there, let them all know how this works. And then you can see behind the scenes. And then when you listen to the podcast, you have no idea. And then you listen to the outtakes of the podcast, you're like, oh. So yeah, playerprofiler.com/podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast, and you can just fast forward to the outtakes and check out the outtakes. If you're watching the stream, there's fun outtakes on the podcast that you don't get with the live stream. What about this Texans wide receiver situation? Because I mentioned earlier that Tank Dell is a value, and Nico Collins is not.
Could it be the other way around, though, guys? Could it be that Nico Collins ends up being the one who's the true alpha, and that Tank Dell is more like a complete spike week boom bust player? That
I think that it's just a matter of like cost here. In some leagues, like Nico Collins costs a lot more right now than you would think, and I think it's league specific. I think Tank Dell as well. Like I'm in a startup now. I took Tank Dell at what I thought was sort of an appropriate price, kind of well behind Nico Collins. But I'm not as pessimistic on Nico as Matt is. But I do think it's sort of it bounces around. His value is wild, and I do think that there's a chance that all three of them are spike week guys, Alan, this year. Yeah. And I think like it's going to be the kind of situation where draft the two cheaper ones in your draft. And whether it's Dynasty, it's probably getting Tank Dell right now. Mm-hmm. But, you have this elite quarterback, CJ Stroud. He definitely shown a deference towards Tank Dell, though. Like, Tank Dell is definitely his guy. I don't think Tank Dell is going to disappear. But Stephon Diggs is going to be a big pain for both of these guys.
Here's the issue, though. If Tank Dell at 168 pounds gets hurt again, what happens to his Dynasty value, right? Like, let's say in week 7, he's out again for 6 weeks. And that matters, right? Like what you could trade these guys for. Where if Nico misses a month and he's doing fine, like you're just saying that he's not going to perform well. So I understand that. But man, if one of these guys gets injured and misses a month, it just seems like the value is going to be, if you want to get out, it's going to be a lot tougher to get out on Dell for the second year in a row injury.
This is so foolish. Why are you doing this? Why are you gaslighting people? This is such propaganda. It's wrong. I don't appreciate it at all. What you're doing. Do you realize what it took to get me on Tank Dell? Do you realize how hard it was for me to look back through all the Andrew Hawkins of the world, all these midget receivers, and finally get in on Tank Dell, who stands 5'2"? Do you realize what it took for me? And now, at the very moment that I'm finally in on this guy, and I think appropriately, you're like, well, but he's small, so he's injury prone. The concern with the size is not about injuries. Okay, he has his BMI is just fine. He's a low to the ground, stocky dude. I've seen him. I met him. I talked to him. I interviewed him at the Senior Bowl. Injuries are not the problem. The problem with a guy of that size is being able to find the separation and to rise above defenders and not get lost in the shuffle of the read progressions when you're that small. Right, to be able to be used in the red zone and all these concerns, all these things that have held back the Tavon Austins and the Andrew Hawkins of the world, that was a major concern. We've never seen a receiver that small be a significant contributor year over year in fantasy football. Now I think that this particular player is breaking the mold. So it's not about the injuries, man. If you want to worry about the injuries because the guy is small, that's the argument to fade a running back. Right? You want to fade a Jaleel McLaughlin, someone like that, because they're definitely going to be the next Tariq Cohen, then I'm with you 100%. But not with wide receiver. That's just wrong-headed thinking.
Theo, the reason I said it's not necessarily because he believes he's going to get hurt, but what happens if, right? Like, what is the market going to think of him?
Then you hold. It's Dynasty, Alan. You don't have to trade him. Just because his value dips because people don't know how to value or how to discount players based on injuries doesn't mean you have to trade him. You can just hold him.
I think it's more of the market's going to punish an injury for a skinnier wide receiver than it would a Nico Collins. I think that's Alan making that
guys,
the alpha size.
This is Galaxy Brain Dynasty thinking. Okay, this is the thing. We disagree. Let's just agree to disagree on this. If you're Mr. Day Trader Dynasty guy, then don't draft Tank Dell. If you just want great value and explosive playmakers that are tethered to one of the most prolific quarterbacks of the next 5 years, then draft Tank Dell.
Can we talk about Matt's affinity now for low BMI wide receivers, Matt? Because within the same show, you've talked Xavier Worthy, Jordan Addison, and Tank Dell. The low BMI father is back.
I hate myself. I hate it so much.
Can we have a segment on Devonta Smith right now?
Well, let's not forget I'm fading Keon Coleman. I think Devonta Smith is a value at ADP. Oh, yeah. Oh, it goes down the board. I mean, there's pretty much, if it weren't for Javon Baker, then, I would be out on every big receiver. But yes, there is a big receiver named Javon Baker who I think has the potential to be the true wide receiver one. Looks like a proper NFL X receiver. I do like that. But I like those guys at value when they're going late, and there's a lot of ambiguity with the target distribution. That's when I'm now going for these alpha X receiver types. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at, where I know that these quick route running savant receivers are going to go out and give you 13 fantasy points as a floor when they're starting. So yeah, I am adjusting my preferences, my general sort of affinity for the types of receivers, their height and weight. I have shifted, and the breakout finder right here, the breakout finder has helped me. Right, the breakout finder looks at all this data and creates an algorithm that pinpoints receivers that are the highest likelihood of breaking out. And Alan said something in the show sheet that I was offended by, comparing Rome Odunze to Jackson Smith and Jigba, which I think is insulting. I think it's offensive.
It is offensive.
And the breakout finder has Rome Odunze, spoiler alert, as the wide receiver one in this class.
Can you explain
based on the numbers,
just
based on algorithm? But it's partly because Marvin Harrison did not test. So there's a lot less data to work with Marvin Harrison. That's part of the problem. But we love Odunze, and you can go to the Breakout Finder app in the App Store on Google Play. All of the breakout ratings have been updated with the real draft capital. There is a particular receiver who was an Oregon Duck and is now a Denver Bronco who did not get the expected draft capital and has completely cratered in the breakout finder. So you check out where he lands. But yes, Rome Odunze is not at risk of being JSN this year. That's just silly.
Well, think about it. JSN was the number one wide receiver off the board, goes to a situation where he starts off as the number 3 guy between 2 established veterans. Now you don't have to project them. Rome Odunze, still in the elite tier. He's like the 3rd wide receiver off the board, goes to a situation where there's 2 established alphas. If he comes off to a slow start and everyone assumes Keenan Allen, he's going to be gone next year. What if Keenan Allen plays another year and he's Rome Odunze? Unless Rome Odunze you think is going to push those 2 guys to the side and just ascend right away, then sure. But I think there's real JSN risk with Rome Odunze.
The counter argument is it's CeeDee Lamb Part 2, and he's good enough to overtake DJ Moore within a year, and he's already ahead of DJ Moore in dynasty value right now. So I think Rome Odunze dynasty value is pretty insulated unless he completely falls flat on his face. If we're talking about 100 targets, Alan, 100 target season for Odunze, dynasty managers are going to keep him right at the same value. I think he's really, really good, and he's attached to a really, really good quarterback and an offense that has a lot of change in it. They added Swift, they certainly added Allen, they added Odunze, and they added Caleb Williams. So I don't know which way this is going to go, but I think it's a bet on talent situation.
Theo, what if Odunze has the following stats? 65 receptions, 650 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Is that a successful season for Odunze? 65
you didn't give me his stats for the second half of the year, Alan.
No, very good. No, seriously, if those are his stats, is that a good season?
No, that's not a good season. Okay. A player of this level getting 600 yards receiving would be a big disappointment.
What if it was 93 targets, 65 catches, 650 yards, and 4 touchdowns? Is that good enough for Odunze?
I don't think so. I think
okay.
I don't.
That's
think
what JSN got. That was JSN's stat lines. 93 targets, 63 catches, 630 yards, 4 touchdowns.
And Matt, in his, JSN fade argument, made a good point about lack of wide receiver 2 games. JSN just didn't put up spike weeks. Odunze is too good a player to not put up some spike weeks for us and at least show, the ability to take over an NFL game fantasy-wise. Like, Odunze has the size, the athleticism, the potential to be a red zone winner. And also, let's be honest, it's going to be a much higher quality offense and a much faster paced offense than what we saw in Seattle last year. So, and the difference also, I think, with Keenan Allen, as good a player as Keenan Allen is he's in a new offense as well. So I don't think this is sort of like a Caleb's going to say, I have to get the ball to Keenan Allen. I think if anything, it's DJ Moore has the best foot forward because of the familiarity with Eberflus. But now we have 2 new wide receivers thrown in the room. I don't know. I think Caleb Williams would be good enough to support multiple weapons on each week. We saw how quickly CJ Stroud was able to elevate guys last year. Like, Caleb Williams is on a very, very upward trajectory for what he's going to do for us in fantasy.
No doubt that Caleb Williams, he even is, let's say he is CJ Stroud. He supported 2 receivers, not 3. Rome Odunze. That's what I'm saying. There's more risk with Odunze than most people are thinking going in. His draft call. Go ahead.
Well, I'll say this: like he did support Dell and Collins, but you also saw the incredible spike week run from Noah Brown, where Noah Brown also had those weeks, and then you also had Dalton Schultz, who was a usable player at tight end, for the entire season. So, Stroud, I think these really high level quarterbacks just kind of don't underestimate how these things kind of come into place. Like, Odunze got the top 10 NFL draft capital that we wanted to see from him. He had the testing numbers at the combine we wanted to see from him, and now he gets attached to a great quarterback. I don't know. I'm going to take an optimistic approach with Odunze.
Go ahead, Matt.
Also, the Bears brought in a satellite back to be there. Like, when we talk about, what are the moves like the Titans are making? The Titans are going to be more of an up-tempo offense. They're going to run more plays this year. Why? No Derrick Henry. It's not like the Bears brought in Josh Jacobs. They didn't bring in Josh Jacobs last time I checked, right? They didn't bring in one of these grinder backs. They have a bunch of backs that are explosive and can catch passes. Right? That's what they've decided. The identity of this team is clearly pass first, up tempo. And that is hopefully what we're going to get in Seattle as well. The Seattle was league bottom in pace of play. That's one of the reasons why JSN wasn't more productive. You have Tyler Lockett, another year older. You have DK Metcalf, who's now on the wrong side of the age apex, and he's a big, size, speed specimen that doesn't take good care of his body. That's the sort of Demaryius Thomas career track for DK Metcalf, which I don't like. So even Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I don't necessarily think is, a wide receiver 1 in the making, he's still a value. If we're talking about underrated players, he's still a value just on the potential of this Seattle offense to change its philosophy and stop being so grind it out, slow the game down with a new offensive coordinator. It's very, very, very possible that we see, a leap forward for especially Metcalf this year and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And when you look, if you're talking about injuries, Keenan Allen has an injury track record that is actually more predictive than size. Just so you know, Allen, we have an injury finder app, and you can see the injury probability for a Keenan Allen. So if you want to talk about injuries, potentially, vaulting a Nico Collins, there's also the potential of injuries vaulting Rome Odunze, though unfortunately he himself is injured, which
forgot about that. That's a good
really,
call. He shows up with a hammy.
Unfortunately, yes. So that's a bummer. But yes, so there's no risk. I mean, there's no risk with Odunze. He is the most risk-free wide receiver. One of the most risk-free wide receivers in my lifetime. I will say that.
There's a quote sheet right there.
Yeah, quote that one. Tyler
Quote that one. Quote it. That's a good one. I actually think that's a good one.
Can we talk about Brian Robinson?
Oh yeah, we forgot
Can
about.
we fucking talk about Brian Robinson, guys? we promised the people Brian Robinson. Though before we get to Brian Robinson, I have a question.
Fire away.
Now it's a big question of whether we're ever going to talk about Brian Robinson. I love how we're perpetually teasing one of the more uninteresting players in the NFL. The only thing interesting that ever happened to Brian Robinson was he got shot in the ass. And he had one of the great runs of touchdown luck and explosive runs for an unathletic running back you'll ever see in the history of the NFL last year. So actually, there's a lot of interesting things about, actually, what am I talking about? Brian Robinson's fascinating. But is it possible that the Giants' new uniforms hold back Malik Neighbors? Because that's
Malik
currently
Neighbors
the conversation in the chat. The chat is currently obsessed with the Bears' new uniforms, with the Giants' new uniforms, and
Giants,
just how
yeah.
bad they are.
They're only going to wear them twice, it said. So it's not
They're
really.
They're apparently the worst uniforms in the history of the league.
Yeah, I saw.
They're
Did you
awful.
see them? Yeah,
They're
they're
awful.
fine. It's fine.
1958. It's a terrible look. It's really a terrible look.
Yeah, but that's what they say about like anytime like Facebook gets a makeover or Instagram gets a new button, they always say, "Oh, this is terrible," and then they implement it and people like it. So I
They
predict
have
it'll be
this-
the same thing.
It's like a very big block number right in the front of the jersey. I think it's one of the most unaesthetically pleasing jerseys we've ever seen. The color scheme is not great. It looks like a made up football team for like
UFL.
a TV show. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like gold pants with it's bad. It's bad. The block number across, like you already have the number on the back. Why do you need the number in the front? I think if they would have just gone without if it was just kind of like a 49ers look and you incorporated what are we doing? We're talking about jerseys now, but yeah, if you would have just got rid of the whole number thing and had a traditional number on the back, it wouldn't have been as gross. It still would have been gross though.
You're doing the full analysis. You could have just said, "I don't like it." You're giving suggestions. You're talking about the color schemes, the brand colors. I mean, by the way, did you see there was another headline that said Xavier Worthy's car is stolen? I saw that one come across, and then I saw the comments are always the best. Someone said it was probably Rashee Rice that did it.
There you go. There you go.
Well, it's kind of an indictment on him that he couldn't catch up to it. Right? I thought he was the fastest guy. How did he let his car get away? That's maybe he needs to retake the 40.
Hey guys, no. When we talk about undervalued players, I want to get into some actionable.
No, but I want to say something about the uniforms.
Oh, okay.
I like them.
That's
You know they're throwback uniforms, right, people? You know they're throwbacks. You know they're only going to wear them on a couple occasions, and this is what uniforms used to look like. And the funny thing that happens is when Green Bay or these teams wear the throwback uniforms, everybody winces for a moment, and then they start processing it, and they love them. So give it a chance. Give these new Giants uniforms a chance. I like them. I'm going to be contrarian.
You're not going to see any. You're not going to see any kids on Long Island walking around with that choice of Giants jersey. I'll say that, Alan. It's not going to be a popular one with the youth.
It's the Emperor's New Clothes. It's so ugly that it's great, right? All right, guys. One of the most undervalued players, and maybe that's changing a little bit perception-wise, but Will Levis in Superflex leagues. He's going to be the starter for at least the next 18 weeks. He did have that one This is almost like the Kadarius Toney thing, right, guys? Where you saw that one amazing game and you can't get it out of your head. So, is Will Levis undervalued? Is there someone that you want to trade for when you're in a QB pinch in Dynasty?
Will we ever talk about Brian Robinson? We're not pivoting to Will Levis. I love it. I love it so much. I mean, Will Levis is probably bad. That is why I don't like him in Dynasty. I don't like bad players, and if I think a guy's probably bad, listen, Daniel Jones had a season. Everybody has a season. If you're in a seasonal league, if you want to be late-round quarterback and you want to have a sexy late-round quarterback pick, Will Levis. Will Levis, backdoor stacks on Underdog. Yeah, Oh, yeah. I love those backdoor stacks, those Baker Mayfield, Chris Godwin stacks. I'm all about it. Minshew and Jacoby Myers. I'm all about it. I'm all about it in best ball. Single season, sure. That's the thing. There are some players where I would recommend them for 1 year based on the situation, but until I have more confidence that they're good, I'm just not drafting them in Dynasty. This is Dynasty. This is a Dynasty League show. And with Dynasty League shows, I'm hesitant to draft bad players.
Quarterback 23 on Keep Trade Cut, Alan. It seems kind of worth a shot based on kind of what the team has done for him. They draft JC Latham for the offensive line. We like that pick. And then they keep adding, pass catchers, and they're old pass catchers, but they have put a lot of money into it. So I don't know. I haven't seen him sort of steam up in terms of like the team's doing this for him. We expect him to take a step forward. Therefore, his dynasty value is rising. Like,
no, it's the opposite. They added Calvin Ridley, right?
Yeah.
They still have D-Hop. And again, even though we don't like Tyler Boyd for fantasy football, that's still a reliable pass catcher that could help Will Levis if he gets into a pinch on third down. They have the two running backs that catch passes. What I'm saying here is that Will Levis, does he have an opportunity to outproduce, would you say, quarterback 23? Can he be QB 18?
Yeah.
Maybe he's a little underrated.
No, because look at the other options you have available to you. Okay. Now, Deshaun Watson goes a little bit earlier, but Deshaun Watson has multiple top 5 seasons. We know Deshaun Watson at one point in time was good at football. So I think there's more upside with Deshaun Watson. I think that's more of an upside pick. And look at Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield and Will Levis have very similar ADPs, and Baker Mayfield has very similar weapons. The older wide receivers with pass-catching running backs, that's what Tennessee has surrounded Will Levis with. That's what Tampa has surrounded Baker Mayfield with. But Baker Mayfield has a hell of a lot more quality, efficient games on his resume than Will Levis does. And you probably know the guy I want. I mean, if you're relying on Will Levis in Dynasty, you're fucked. All right? So if we're drafting a QB3, if we're one of those teams that's going to be one of the first to grab our third quarterback in Superflex, my guy's Michael Penix. So if you want upside, if you want a big arm, athletic, all those things that Will Levis has, and you're playing the long game in Dynasty, Penix is the move, man. It's not Levis.
Yeah, he's going a little bit earlier. People are getting hip to that move, so I think it's a good call right there. But in some of the more experienced leagues, the Penix's upside is certainly, starting to harden. It's starting to stiffen his position.
I like the Baker Mayfield call there by Matt. I think Baker Mayfield right now,
What's the difference?
Exactly. And Baker Mayfield, we've seen him have a QB1 season, and I would say better weapons than Tennessee. I think that, the experience there, the lack of, and also they didn't lose anybody. And they add Jalen McMillan, they add Bucky Irving, two guys who can catch the football into that offense. So
the only person they lost was the one person I'm worried about, which is the OC, right? That does trouble me. Yeah, that troubles me a little bit. A little bit. So something. It's something.
You're not allowed to do that here around Matt. But Dave Canales certainly knew what he was doing. But it doesn't mean that the Dave Canales disciples can't step up and do it as well. So
right.
I don't know. I think it's a lot of continuity in Tampa Bay. That entire offense is back. They had the least amount of vacated targets in the league, I believe. They're either number 1 or number 2 in the least amount. So everybody's back. And then the McMillan was a nice pick for them. Another addition. We talked about Rome Odunze. Jalen McMillan's production 2 seasons ago at Washington was very good. And it's a pedigreed player. They get him in the 3rd round. And the Bucky Irving addition, we expect a lot out of Rachaad White, but Bucky Irving led the nation in receptions by a running back as well. So I don't know. I like Baker. It's less of sort of a leap of faith than Will Levis because we've already seen it. Baker Mayfield could regress and still give you a QB 15 season.
And don't forget about Trey Palmer.
And Trey Palmer. Yeah, Trey Palmer's there.
Trey
Everybody
Palmer runs a
goes,
4-3. Trey Palmer has tactical value for real-life football and improves quarterback efficiency when you have that field stretcher keeping defenses honest. Mike Evans doesn't run as fast as he used to. They're now moving Chris Godwin into the slot, which is great right now because they can rotate. I love the McMillan pick because McMillan is a traditional NFL flanker, but you can also get like a stretch Z in Trey Palmer, mix it up with your formations, mix it up with your personnel groupings, and keep defenses honest. Look at Baker Mayfield's statistics. Baker Mayfield's efficiency was good last year. Right? Just go through all the advanced stats on PlayerProfiler. He's top 5 in some key efficiency metrics.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield was good. And they also let him have multiple games with like a decent amount of running attempts. So he could be a little bit more efficient as a runner this year. He had one rushing touchdown last year, but just based on the usage, it could end up being like, 3 or 4. So Baker Mayfield, I think, is a fine player at cost. And also an offense that I think is a little bit underrated right now.
A little bit underrated. Potentially, I think, per the mind of Manchin, I believe that the 3 most underrated offenses are Tampa, Washington, and Las Vegas.
I like all 3 in best ball right now.
I like all 3 for Dynasty.
Washington's the one, though, Matt, for Dynasty. I think, you bring up the Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
I think that there's, and I'm a Ben Sinnott guy. We're not allowed to talk about Brian Robinson. It's banned here on the Sonic Truth, I guess, at this point. But, like these guys, like all of the auxiliary guys are cheap right now. Jahan Dotson, but also Luke McCaffrey is turning some heads at minicamp for the rookie minicamp as well. So
Zach Ertz healthy at all, by the way, guys? Is he, because he's always been C blocking
who cares?
Rookie tight ends.
He's there to tutor my guy Sinnott. He's there to instill
Zach
some wisdom.
Ertz, nobody's cock blocked more rookie tight ends than Zach Ertz. He got Dallas Goedert. He cock blocked Trey McBride, and now he's in front of Ben Sinnott, maybe supposedly.
Can't stop a guy like Ben Sinnott. You can't slow him down. You cannot slow him down, Alan. It's inevitable.
Ben Sinnott is inevitable. That's what we're saying now.
That's the show title.
That's an official take of the Sonic Truth podcast. Ben Sinnott is.
It's a Theo Gremminger take. These guys don't have to own it.
Wow. He's bust proof. Everybody.
Ben Sinnott.
Yeah.
What about Jermaine Burton? If we're looking at value rookies, I love the McMillan call. I like the McCaffrey call. I just love those offenses, right? I even think, for Dynasty, I mean, couldn't the Michael Mayer be a value? If we're talking about these 3 teams that I think have all the value, I think that he was a prolific tight end. He's now, an afterthought in Dynasty. He's worth nothing, but injuries happen at the tight end position. It's a very violent position, and he could also go somewhere else. We have a lot of players like Greg Olsen, Martellus Bennett, so many that produce nothing in their first 4 years, and then with their second contract, boom, they end up getting unlocked and being top 5 tight ends. So for a stash, if you have a deep dynasty team, I'm all about stashing Michael Mayer. It's just that Bowers couldn't fall any further in the draft. No one had Bowers falling any further. Like the Raiders had the most forced hand in the draft I've ever seen. The quarterbacks they wanted were all gone, and there was a top 5 talent that they just couldn't resist, even though they had just drafted a good tight end at the beginning of the second round the previous year. So that was the ultimate hand-forced pick. So that means Michael Mayer is a little bit of a value. But also, if we're looking at back to the rookies, I like to mine value. We talked about like Dell and Michael Wilson in the 3rd round last year. We talked about some 3rd-round receivers this year in McMillan and McCaffrey. Jermaine Burton.
like we've talked about Jermaine Burton now. I think this is his second show in a row. Jermaine Burton, though, is steaming. Like, I saw somebody in the chat bringing up Roman Wilson versus Burton. Like, that ship sailed. Like, Burton's going ahead of Roman Wilson in all of these drafts now.
Oh, but that's
Burton
not right.
Burton goes ahead of Jalen Polk. Burton goes ahead of a lot of these guys because
I'm fine with him going ahead of all those guys on upside, but wait a second. Roman Wilson?
Yeah, he's going ahead of Wilson.
Because there's Twitter highlights of Burton right now with no pads on catching slants from Joe Burrow. So that's why. I mean, listen, we can make fun of it all we
Wilson is like the ultimate high floor, high ceiling third round receiver. I've never loved third round receivers more than I do this year. I mean, Roman Wilson could have been a first round pick. He ran a sub 4.40.
I mean, like, I think that, you nailed it kind of with the appeal of these third round receivers. It's a high quality class, and some of these guys fell to the third round. Roman Wilson versus Burton, though, Matt, you get they both have a player in front of them. In Burton's case, he has two players in front of him at the wide receiver position, but it's sort of like a 2025. Here's a question for you, Matt. 2025, let's say George Pickens takes a step forward. Roman Wilson as the wide receiver 2 in Pittsburgh next to George Pickens, or Jermaine Burton as the wide receiver 2 in Cincinnati in the T. Higgins role next to Joe Burrow. The quality of the offense, the quality of the quarterback is going to push Jermaine Burton for me there, with the potential to have huge spike weeks. Whereas Roman Wilson, it's hard for me to see him overtaking George Pickens. It could happen. It could be like a Jaden Reed versus Christian Watson type situation where guys get banged up, maybe guys don't take a step forward. But with Burton, you already have seen it. T. Higgins thrives in that offense. He steps into the Higgins role. He's incredibly fast, can win downfield. And as a wide receiver 2 in Cincinnati, I think that pathway's right there.
But wait, well, hold on. Jamar Chase is in Cincinnati, right?
Well, Chase is the given.
Well, the only given is Chase. All the rest of these guys have uncertainty around them. So,
true.
You want to tell me, long-term potential, that's part of the ceiling, is like George Pickens just doesn't fire in the NFL the way we want him to. Jamar Chase is plowed ground. He's established. He's not going anywhere. And also, he's like an incredibly disciplined, hardworking player who's going to minimize his number of games missed. So, I mean, T. Higgins isn't that, right? If you want to argue the guy could step in and have a nice wide receiver 2 career, sure. But what I'm saying is Roman Wilson is the wide receiver 2 now as opposed to next year, and has more runway for a greater upside. It's like, Burton's, he's really fast. Yeah, okay. Roman Wilson ran a sub 4.40. Roman Wilson was a national champion. Roman Wilson was a team guy. Whereas Burton was hated by everyone that was around him in college. So, excuse me. You have to excuse me if I'm going to go with, the team captain prototype, checks all the boxes, can't believe he fell to the third round, over the risk-reward guy that is just such a Bengals pick. I mean, if the Bengals are so risk on the risk-reward spectrum, they're so heavily risk because they know they have to take those swings because they don't have as much money to spend as other teams. Burton could have gone 5th round. Like, we'll see, man.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I think
Tajay Sharp had a great mini camp once upon a time.
Burton also has a little bit of sneaky value. I think, Alan, he's steaming up a little bit in best ball because it's sort of been said that he's going to take over the Tyler Boyd snaps on an offense that supports the wide receiver 3 some weeks as well. Cincinnati just passes a ton. And the high-quality quarterback play. So I don't know. Matt,
I heard Iasovis has the inside track to that role.
I don't think so. I think Burton's going to take it. I think,
This is such a May conversation.
I love it.
This conversation is so May. How the guy that was off the radar, that the team reached for. It looks good in camp with his shirt off, and now we're penciling him in ahead of the guy that was penciled into that role, for months before that. This is so meh.
Yeah, but Theo's right, though. In the drafts I'm in, Burton is starting to go ahead of Roman Wilson, but that could be like people are in 12, 15 drafts, and they're getting a little bored of what the ADP, like nothing's changed since Roman Wilson was drafted. So I agree, there's good narrative to tell yourself that there's more upside being attached to Joe Burrow, but when I've been on the clock, I've been taking Roman Wilson just because, like I said, it's almost like a can't-miss pick, but
yes.
Listen, I'm happy other people are doing it.
He's literally the only receiver I would draft
Calvin Austin
outside the top 15 in Dynasty rookie drafts. Actually, him and Burton. I mean, I do like Burton, but you're making me choose, man. That's the thing.
How about Corley? Is he in that group too? Malachi Corley with the Jets?
He's going further down. He's not quite with those two guys.
Right. He's going 3.3, 3.4. I've seen.
Yeah, I mean he falls sometimes because he also goes in that range in the third round where it's like the Kamani Vidals, the Tyrone Tracys, the I want to get my handcuff running backs. Sometimes you see a Rashad White manager take Bucky Irving. Maybe a Saquon Barkley manager takes a Will Shipley in that range.
But here it is. Like if you have pick 2.11 and you're choosing between Roman Wilson and Burton and you like Corley, you only get one pick. You don't get to say, oh, this guy goes 6 picks later. So if you want Corley, who probably deserves to be in that conversation, if you believe he's the new Randall Cobb, right, for Aaron Rodgers. I mean,
shout out to Anthony Amico, our friend from Establish the Run, because that Randall Cobb comment, I never saw that until it was Amico. I read something he said with that, and it was
said it on NFL Network. That's
I didn't hear that one. Schrager said that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon.
I don't see that one. I mean,
well, I've heard he's Debo. I've heard, he's that guy that can get a few carries. He's like a stocky build. I mean, listen.
How did we get here, man? Do you realize how amazing this is? Can we just take a step back for a second? This is a Western Kentucky receiver who 3 years ago would have been a deep day 3 pick that we would have been truthering for and no one else would have cared about. Now he goes early third round. He goes ahead of the guys we've been talking about. Went ahead of Roman Wilson, for Christ's sake. That's rare. And now you have fantasy gamers and you have draft analysts comparing him to Randall Cobb and Deebo Samuel and all these things just because he led the league and led the nation in yak. Man,
he goes pick
the edge that you find, it's so funny how full circle things come. And it's like, if we were talking a couple months ago, I would have been predicting, for sure, I'm going to circle as the value in this spot the Western Kentucky guy. That's clearly going to be, I'm going to be all over him. Everyone else is an idiot, right? Where are we? I'm touting, think about who we're touting. We're touting the national championship wide receiver 1 and a guy from Alabama.
Podfather Theo on
happened.
Player Profiler's best comparable to Malachi Corley is 2 degrees away from Randall Cobb. His best comparable is Curtis Samuel, and Curtis Samuel's best comparable is Randall Cobb on Player Profiler. So there is a connection.
And again, Randall Cobb played a good amount of quarterback at Kentucky. He was not your traditional wide receiver prospect. Malachi Corley, I will say this, he's an absolute unit. Everybody in the NFL is jacked, but Malachi Corley's like next level athlete, next level jack kind of guy. And Jets social media wants Malachi Corley to be a thing. For whatever it's worth, you never know, Matt, when the social media start really, really hyping one of these rookies. You don't know if it's like an internal thing where, hey, let's get a little juice going for Malachi. Malachi Corley is going to get every chance to help this offense. The problem with Malachi Corley is that going to translate for us for fantasy purposes? Or is he just like a really useful NFL player who can do things on manufactured plays? Maybe they do give him some manufactured carries where he ends up being sort of like a Curtis Samuel, which is great for the NFL, but not necessarily a guy we're going to be starting in fantasy. That's kind of my take with Corley versus Wilson and Burton, which I think profile as guys that I think have a little bit more straight line into our fantasy lineups if a few things happen.
And if we take it all the way full circle to the beginning of this show, what did I talk about? Underrated veteran receivers, and you mentioned him, Curtis Samuel.
It's a great spot right now. He's in a
Curtis
great
Samuel
spot.
is in a much better spot than any of these people we've been talking about. That's a value play. That's why you can sneak in a running back earlier in dynasty startups than in previous years. It's one of those reasons why in seasonal leagues I'm drafting running backs in the first round. I'm comfortable doing it, because there's the Curtis Samuels late. There's a lot of fun, interesting, high floor, high ceiling running back receivers available late in Dynasty right now and in all formats. It's the most talent rich the wide receiver position has ever been.
So Curtis Samuel's best fantasy season was with Joe Brady in Carolina. Now they're sort of reunited, and it's a big, huge target void. We talked about Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, how they don't lose anybody, whereas Buffalo lost all of the Stephon Diggs, all of the Gabe Davis, and they have they've added Keon Coleman, who we like, but he's a very young rookie, and they're going to play him at the X. So Curtis Samuel could be an every down player in one of the league's best offenses and have a pathway to, we saw him have 107 targets at his peak. I think him returning to that 110, 115 target range with always you get the few manufactured running plays for Samuel as well. Like, I think that's sort of in the wheelhouse.
PPR Tyler in the chat.
Oh, yeah, the guest house
Malachi
narrative.
Corley is literally living at Aaron Rodgers' house.
Guest house narrative, Matt.
Wow.
The Cato Kalin. He's Cato Kalin.
It's a Cato Kalin narrative. Nothing ever goes wrong.
Yep.
I mean, you have to love it, man. Do you think he's going to be Aaron Rodgers' vice president also?
Might be down the line.
Because I think Aaron Rodgers is running for office at this point.
He said on the Tucker Carlson podcast that he was not going to be running for office even when he retires. So
Sure, Aaron. Sure, whatever you say. Keep going on these political podcasts because you don't want to be in politics. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. It's great. Yeah, Malachi for vice president. Malachi for Veep. Love it.
Yeah, I think Malachi Corley is a defensible pick over both of the players that you guys like. I like Roman Wilson out of all those for the highest floor. I think Corley is not being properly valued in the middle of the third round. I've taken him one time at 211, and I went back and forth if I regret it or not, but I like him there. And I know I was only get one pick, right? My next pick was at 311. So
can someone help me out here? Like, okay, I like good players, and I believe Malachi Corley is a good player, but situation also does matter. Okay, so walk me through this. Do we believe Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing for the Jets in 2025?
I think it's 2 years. 2 years.
I think it's 2 years as well. I would bet on a 2-year run for Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, and we think that Garrett Wilson, though, isn't going anywhere, right?
No.
Correct. But is Mike Williams going to play all games? I mean, last year he lasted 3 weeks, right? I mean, I know before that he was
I don't care about Mike Williams. What I care about is that
Aaron
Rodgers plays slow. Aaron Rodgers is a low pace of play. There was one year they finished 32. The Packers, finished number 32 in pace of play with Aaron Rodgers under center for the whole season. It was embarrassing. He plays slow. Generally speaking, the slowest playing teams can only support a wide receiver one. Those guys typically, Devontae Adams, they'll be fine, but the auxiliary receivers have a very hard time getting there. Yeah. So I don't see the path like I see it for a Roman Wilson, like I even see it for Jermaine Burton with Malachi Corley, but I do like drafting good players.
Yeah.
Right? That is the thing. So again, most people, I'm saying, just forget it. Draft Kamani Vidal, draft Dylan Lobby, draft Will Shipley, draft all these guys. I'm the running back whisperer in these rookie drafts.
Can I ask you, because you like Dylan Lobby, you guys have been talking up. I actually used the player profiler rankings this morning that have, and go see them if you want to know where he's ranked, that have him above market. And I'm able to get Lobby anytime I want in the 5th round. I just got him at 5-4. And I guess I'm in your bubble a little bit here, so I'm like, oh my god, this is great. But why do you think that he's being underrated right now, Lobby? I mean, was it just because of the 6th-round draft capital? What do you think is not necessarily the upside, guys, but what's like the medium case upside, not like the super nuclear upside?
I don't understand it. Like, you have to understand how wrong I would be if I was to predict ADPs. Okay, Malachi Corley is getting all this hype and all these crazy Debo comps. And Dylan Lobby is an afterthought, though he did get drafted. That's the thing. There's this arbitrary draft slot bias that comes up. Like, if he had gone 4th round, oh my God. But he went 6th round, so poo-poo. That's what it is. Where to me, I'm looking at a Danny Woodhead going undrafted. I'm looking at an Austin Eckler going undrafted going, oh, we had a small school guy with an Eckler-Woodhead skill set, and the NFL appreciated him enough to draft him before round 7. That's good. What? But it's just the prism through which players get valued is difficult to predict sometimes. That's all I can tell you. He is going to step into a satellite back role right away, supplanting Amir Abdullah. Amir Abdullah probably won't even be on the team when the season starts. It's going to be the Lobby show on passing downs. And he has the ability to be an Aaron Jones type satellite back plus if, Zamir White either struggles or is injured or for whatever reason they feel like he's more like A.J. Dillon, then you could see the touch distribution tilting where the opportunity share actually goes Lobby's way the second half of this year, more next year, right? The issue is, are the Raiders going to draft someone? So what I would do if I have Lobby, and I have a lot of Lobby, is I'm also cheering for Zamir White. I'm drafting them both, and I want Zamir White to be good enough that the Raiders don't go back to running back in next year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, look at the comments, guys. It's Lobby is undrafted in my drafts. It's Rasheen Ali is better than Lobby. I mean, the chat is reflective of what I'm seeing in my drafts, Podfather.
Yeah, I would agree with Alan. Lobby's become sort of somewhat free in a lot of these drafts. Rasheen Ali's interesting, though, when you go Rasheen Ali versus Lobby, though, because we've been chasing Derrick Henry's handcuff for like years and years and years. And now Derrick Henry gets to a new team, and it's sort of like we don't want the potential next man in.
Well, it's
like
Justice Hill.
Is it Justice Hill?
Yes, he's the veteran player that's there because he's there and he's the veteran. I mean, like that's how these coaches think.
Why draft a super productive 210-pound running back like Rasheen Ali if they don't view him as a guy who can take away Justice Hill's role?
You want all these guys. You want all these guys, man. You just want Ali. You want Lobby. This is what I'm saying. You want Vidal. You certainly want Tracy and Shipley.
Oh, yeah.
Just load them all up in your shopping cart and check the fuck out.
Give me all the Tracy. Tracy.
And you could argue for a Corley, you can argue for a Burton and all these long-term plans of this player is going to be a free agent and this player is going to get hurt and Aaron Rodgers is not going to go into politics and he's going to stay a Jet forever. Like, what? No. We do this every year. Again, just say no to Groundhog Day. We talk ourselves into these 3rd, 4th, and 5th round rookie wide receivers and rookie drafts, and we look up and they're on the waiver wire. And they are burning a hole in your roster. They're clogging it up. Why do it? Why do it when you're much more likely to get instant production, microwave production from these running backs than the receivers?
Right. Even if you get like 2 clarified starts out of him, it's better than because Jermaine Burton's best weeks are probably going to be on your bench, right? I mean, if he just pops off.
I like him. That's the thing. It's the crazy thing. It's like I'm allowed to like these players, but tactically it doesn't make sense to actually draft them in rookie drafts most of the time. So I want to give the people, normally, full disclosure, in my 10 years doing this, I would almost always end with something like So now I want to talk about Brian Robinson and then end the show, right? And then fade to black. Normally, that's what I would do, right? But I'm different, man. I'm older. I now have a more of an appreciation for the audience. I'm not that guy anymore. I'm not that guy. I understand that people are investing time in watching this show. They have relied on us. They have drafts coming up, or they have trades that are pending. They need us, and I am here for you. And so, absolutely, I am ready to talk about Brian Robinson right now. From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.